We've all seen the movie Dead People coming to their senses at a funeral. But what if there were such cases in real life as well? Just about such a case will be discussed below. Brighton Dame Zonti. It's hard to even imagine what people experience when a deceased person is literally resurrected before their eyes at their own funeral. This is exactly the experience that the people of Kuru town in Zimbabwe had a few years ago. A 34-year-old man named Brighton Dame Zonti was pronounced dead by doctors. The cause of death was attributed to a prolonged illness that destroyed the man. Funeral arrangements have been made for Brighton. As people gathered around his coffin and began to pay their respects and see him off, they noticed that Brighton was moving. The mourners almost lost their speech and scattered in fear in different directions, thinking that Mr. Zonti had risen from the dead like a zombie to start hunting them down. But when they calmed down and recovered a little from the shock, they realized what had happened. The doctors were wrong. His relatives immediately took him to the local hospital, where he was hooked up to an artificial life support machine. And after just 2 days, Brighton was discharged and sent home. This is such an unusual turn of events, but the important thing is that it ends well. The 55-year-old Malik worked as a shepherd in Odisha, a state in eastern India. One day he did not return home from grazing. They started looking for him at the places where he used to walk with his goats. When Malik was found, he was unconscious. The relatives rightly assumed that the man had died. They dug a grave and organized a funeral. Already at the ceremony, one of the attendees noticed that Malik shook his head faintly. He began to curse loudly at the funeral directors. The ceremony was immediately interrupted. Malik was taken out of the grave and sent to the hospital. Already there, doctors determined that the man had been struck down by a high fever. It was because of this that he lost consciousness and looked as if he had died. That's how it sometimes happens that people get resurrected at their funerals. What do you think about that? Let me know in the comments. But we'll move on to the next case. Tony Yall. Tony Yall, a mechanic from Ohio, was taken to the hospital on the morning of August 4, 2013, after his wife noticed that his breathing sounded strange. He remained in stable condition for several hours, until late afternoon when his heart suddenly stopped beating. Attempts to revive Yall were unsuccessful. After 45 minutes, doctors pronounced him dead. Refusing to acknowledge the news, Tony Yall's 17-year-old son named Lawrence burst down the hospital hallway into the room and shouted, "Daddy, you're not gonna die today." Coincidence or not, within moments Yali began to show signs of life. His heart was beating again. After recovering from their surprise, the doctors realized that there was no time to lose and resumed resuscitation procedures. A few minutes later, the car mechanic finally rose from the dead. The resurrected Tony's heart looked perfectly healthy by all parameters and criteria. Tony was scrutinized and examined for several days and was soon released home. Just a week after the incident, the man went to work. Some Iron Man. What do you think about that? Will the son really bring the father back from the dead?